You're lying in bed at 1 a.m., and your mind is on fire. You can see it so clearly: the business, the book, the move to another city, the version of you that wakes up at 5 and owns the morning. You open a notes app and start typing. Bullet points, plans, domain names maybe. You feel that warmth in your chest, that electric certainty that this time it's real, this time you mean it. And then morning comes. The alarm goes off and the light is gray and flat, and the idea from last night feels like something someone else whispered to you in a dream. You make coffee, you scroll, you go to work, or you sit at your desk and do the bare minimum. And somewhere between breakfast and lunch, the whole vision just quietly folds itself up and disappears into a drawer you never open. And the worst part isn't that you didn't do it. The worst part is the silence afterward, that specific flavor of shame that doesn't even bother yelling at you anymore. It just sits in your ribs like a low hum, like a disappointed parent who stopped asking where you were. You've done this dozens of times, maybe hundreds. The dreaming, the planning, the total and absolute failure to move. And every self-help video and productivity guru and well-meaning friend has told you the same thing: that you're lazy, that you lack discipline, that you need to just start, just do the thing, just show up. But here's what none of them ever stopped to consider. What if the problem was never laziness? What if the dreaming and the freezing are not opposites at all, but two ends of the same deeply intelligent, deeply protective psychological wire? What if nothing is actually wrong with you, and the pattern you can't break is not a flaw, but an adaptation, one that saved you once and now just doesn't know how to stop? There's a concept in psychology that doesn't get enough attention outside of clinical circles, and it comes from the work of psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott. He called it the false self. The idea is simple, but it cuts deep. When a child grows up in an environment where their authentic impulses, their weird little wants, their natural tempo, are met with criticism or coldness or just plain indifference, the child learns to build a second self on top of the real one, a self that performs, a self that watches the room before it speaks. And that false self becomes so good at its job that eventually the person can't tell the difference anymore. They think their real self is the one who dreams big at night, and maybe it is, but the false self is the one who wakes up in the morning and says, "Not yet, not today, it's not ready." Because the false self learned a long time ago that wanting things out loud gets you hurt. Now layer on top of that something a neuroscientist named Panksepp spent decades studying: the brain's seeking system. This is not the reward system, not dopamine as pleasure the way pop science describes it. The seeking system is the urge to pursue, to explore, to reach towards something you don't have yet. It is the neurological engine of desire itself. And here's what matters. The seeking system generates its most intense activation, not during achievement, but during anticipation, which means the fantasy, the late-night planning, the vision board in your head, that already feels like accomplishment to your brain. Your nervous system has already gotten its hit. The dream was the drug. Execution was never part of the chemical deal. So you are not lazy. You are caught between a protective self that learned stillness equals safety and a brain that already cashed the emotional check before you ever left the house. That is not a character flaw. That is a sophisticated, exhausting, deeply human trap. Let me take you somewhere for a moment. You're 9 years old, maybe 10. It's a Saturday, and you've spent the whole morning building something. A drawing, a story, a little invention made out of tape and cardboard and the guts of a broken radio. You're not thinking about whether it's good, you're just in it fully, the way children are before they learn to watch themselves from the outside. And then someone walks into the room, a parent, an older sibling, a teacher, and they look at what you've made and they say something. Maybe it's, "That's nice," in a voice that clearly means nothing. Maybe it's, "Why are you wasting time on that?" Maybe they don't say anything at all. They just glance and look away, and the absence of reaction lands in your chest like a stone dropped into a well. You can still hear it hit the bottom. That moment, or the accumulation of moments like it, taught you something your conscious mind forgot, but your body remembers perfectly. It taught you that the act of making something and showing it to the world is an act of exposure, and exposure without safety is just vulnerability without a net. So you learned to keep the making internal. You became a dreamer instead of a doer, not because you lacked courage, but because dreaming was the only creative act that couldn't be interrupted, judged, or taken from you. The dream was yours, the only thing that was fully, completely, untouchably yours. And letting it become real meant letting it become theirs too. And you already knew how that ended. The smell of that room is probably still in you somewhere, pencil shavings and carpet dust, and the faint metallic tang of whatever you were building, and the feeling that you were just offered something tender to someone who didn't know how to hold it. So where does that leave you now? Sitting here, watching this, recognizing yourself in the patterns, maybe feeling that strange mix of relief and grief that comes when someone finally names the thing you've been carrying. Here's what I want you to understand. And I need you to hear this without the filter of every voice that's ever told you to just try harder. The gap between your dreams and your actions is not empty. It is full. It is full of intelligence, of pattern recognition, of emotional memory, of survival strategies that worked when you were small and powerless and needed them desperately. The problem is not that you dream too big. The problem is not that you do nothing. The problem is that the word nothing is a lie. You are doing something enormous. You are managing a constant, invisible negotiation between the part of you that wants to be seen and the part of you that learned, correctly at one point, that being seen was not safe. That negotiation takes energy. It takes so much energy that by the time you sit down to actually start the thing, you're already spent. You've been running a full operating system in the background, and no one, including you, gave you credit for it. The reframe is this: you are not a person who dreams big and does nothing. You are a person whose protective systems are so well built, so airtight, so loyal to the child who needed them that they now operate even when the danger is gone. And dismantling that system is not a matter of discipline, it is a matter of safety. Your nervous system needs evidence, not arguments. It needs small, repeated proof that visibility will not destroy you this time. Not a TED Talk, not a vision board, just one small thing made real and survived. One email sent, one paragraph written, one conversation where you said what you actually meant and the world didn't end. That is how the architecture of avoidance comes down. Not in a demolition, but in a slow, patient renovation, one room at a time, with the lights on. I want to leave you with something that might sound strange at first. You are not behind. I know it feels that way. I know there's a clock in your head that keeps counting the years between who you are and who you were supposed to be by now. And I know that clock never stops, not even when you sleep. But the truth is, the version of you that exists right now, the one who dreams in extraordinary detail and freezes at the threshold, is not a failed version of the person you could become. This version is the bridge. This version is the one doing the hardest, most invisible work, the work of learning to trust the world again with something real. And if you're here, if you watched this far, that tells me something about you that no productivity system could ever measure. It tells me you haven't given up. You're still looking for the language that fits. You're still trying to understand yourself instead of just punishing yourself. And that impulse, that stubborn, quiet refusal to accept the lazy narrative is not nothing. That might be the most important thing you've ever done. So sit with that for a minute. Don't plan anything. Don't start a new list. Just let yourself be someone who understood something today that they didn't understand yesterday, and let that be enough for right now. If this felt like it was made for you, leave a comment, even a single word, just to mark that you were here, that you heard it, that the silence broke a little. And if you want more of this, subscribe, not because I need the numbers, but because this is the kind of conversation that gets easier the more you come back to it. I'll be here. The dream isn't going anywhere, and neither are you.